So this is all like the first day.
This is the first day. This is day one.
How many guys did you lose that day?
I don't think anybody. Well, this is probably day 3 by the time we did checking on this. We lost guys in the first part. After this point, it was pretty much guys who were really dedicated to it. So we didn't actually lose. I don't think we lost anybody in the pool that day. I think from there on, we really only lost guys to injury. Or I'm trying to think. I don't think we lost anybody that day, but so it progressively got harder and harder and harder as we went on. They expected you to do more and more and more, but it also got easier in a sense too. You got after a couple weeks, you got used to, and you got really good at holding your breath. So that first day where that first workout seemed extremely tough, that was actually an easy workout towards the end of it. Like swimming 25 meters, repeat 10 times underwater was easy. And it was actually, it wasn't bad at all. And you got used to dealing with them sharking you, and you stop freaking out. And it really, so towards the end of it, you build a lot of confidence in the water. And you kind of thrive on that after a while. You look forward. We actually have games we'd play underwater football, or we'd have relay races underwater where you actually kind of enjoy it after you get good at it, which is interesting.
All right. So how long does this go on?
It was either 3 or 4 weeks I was doing this training phase. And, we did lose because we started out with 30 or 40, and I think 10 or 15 dropped out throughout at different points, or they got hurt because it was pretty intense. So then we got, is when the BRC class picked up. And that was actually kind of a break compared to what we're doing, because this was all day. I think usually we were done by 6 p.m., but it was nonstop all day to something. So we got to BRC, which is in Coronado.
That's Basic Reconnaissance Course?
Yeah, Basic Reconnaissance Course. It's on the same Naval Air Base, Coronado, where the SEALs train.
Mm-hmm.
So we use a lot of the same equipment. We do a lot of the same stuff that they did. And that's more of a gentleman's course. There's officers in it with you, so they don't berate you and treat you as bad as they do. RTP is meant to get you to quit. BRC is actually there to train you how to be a reconnaissance marine. So it's a different mentality of what they're doing. Still really tough, but it wasn't. The pool workouts weren't nearly as intense. So that is 3 phases as well. So you have a month of, I think it was a month each. So I think it was 3 months long. So you have a month of, the first one was land nav and field operations and patrolling. Then you have a phase of, land nav is one phase, patrolling is a phase, and then amphib is a phase, so the water operations. So those were the 3 phases. Land nav was, we actually had a guy quitting land nav because it was cold and it was rainy and it was nasty, and he decided that was enough for him, so he actually quit on that one. And he was actually a recycled guy. He had dropped out before, and so that was his last chance, and he was gone. But land nav, they do day and night land nav. Basically, you have they teach you they give you a map, they give you a point, and they tell you go find. And the points were these little, they look like cigarettes. They were yellow PVC pipes that were yellow and white, just posted the ground, different spots, and they might be 1 or 2 kilometers apart from each other. So you'd have to just learn how to navigate. So that was actually pretty easy. It really wasn't intense.
And they're not handing you a GPS at that point?
No GPS. It was map and a compass and a protractor and a pencil, and you had to figure it out and count your paces and figure out how far you're walking and all that stuff. I do remember at one point, this is before I had any allergic reactions to poison oak, which came later, but it was night land nav, and I found myself in the bottom of this basin it was an old dried up riverbed, and it was so thick you couldn't hardly walk. You had to just push and push and push to get through. And I remember I turned on my, if you use a white flashlight, that's a really bad day for you. They'll come and they'll give you a really tough time. You have to use a red lens, because a red lens has a low signature. You can't see it from very far away. So I turned on my red lens flashlight, and all I could see was 3 leaf bushes all the way around me, it was all poison oak. So it was head to toe, and I just thought about it. I turned off my headlamp and just like, I just kept going. Like I didn't really have a choice. I was already knee deep in it, so I just kept going. And I actually never got it. It was probably 2 or 3 years later before I developed an actual reaction to it, which is nice. But I just remember seeing that, I was like, this is gonna be bad. Just shut it off and just keep going. You don't really have a choice. Patrol phase, that was an eye-opener for me. That's when we were introduced to the rucksacks that were fully loaded out. Before that, in boot camp, you had your ruck and it weighed, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds. I mean, you could pick it up and put it on your back. These were not that. When we were sitting in our squad bay, and they told us everything we had to pack out, so we got them all fixed up and packed tight. And I go to pick mine up, and I couldn't even pick it up off the ground with my hand. I was just like, oh man, this is going to be tough. And I get it, and there's a specific way you have to get when your ruck is so heavy that you can't just pick it up. You have to lay on your back, you put it on your shoulders, and you cinch it on tight. And then you have to roll over on your stomach, and then get up one knee at a time and stand up. And I just remember standing up, and I could barely stand. It was it probably only weighed 80, 90 pounds. But I'd never experienced anything close to that before. And I was just like, I can barely stand. How am I going to patrol with this? And that was very tough getting, because I wasn't a very big guy. I was tall, but I only weighed 160 some pounds. So that was a lot of extra weight compared to the guys who were like 210, 220, who it wasn't too bad for. So patrolling phase, which was I think a week long, and no sleep deprivation, because you pretty much you walk all night to your objective, and then during all day you're doing observation, because the biggest job of reconnaissance is you're a trained observer. So they put you on objective, so you're watching a bridge or a base or a town, and you're watching and you're doing reports and you're sending stuff up all day long, and then at night you start a new mission and you go on, you move all night and you start another one. So it's a week long of sleep deprivation, really heavy packs, and then to wrap it all up, you do ruck runs, which is basically, they say it's a forced march, but if you don't run, you don't make it in time with the packs on. And I had a really hard time with those. I barely made it in time the first couple, just not used to the weight. It was exhausting. And a lot of it too was mental. I think I gave up on myself a little too easily when I probably could have kept going, because on the very final one was a team run. And you're in teams of, I think we were in teams of 6, and you had to run together. Everybody, if anybody dropped out, you had to go back to the slowest person. And there was a challenge, like whoever came in first at the end of this run got to go, during amphib phase, you got to go to sleep after the training was done. You didn't have to put the stuff away, so you didn't have to put the boats and all the equipment in to clean everything up. So you got an extra 2 hours of sleep, pretty much. So my team was like, we're gonna win. And I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna ruin it for the team. I'm not gonna be able to keep up. And it was probably it was at least 3 or 4 hours. It was probably 10, 12 kilometer ruck run. And when all my previous ones that were much shorter, I'd run for a little ways and I'd walk, and I'd run for a little ways and I'd walk. And they were pretty much flat ones because they were at Coronado. This was at Camp Pendleton, so you're up in the hills. And I was actually really proud of myself. We ran the whole time. Like I said, we ran a little slower downhill or slower uphill and then faster on the downhills, but we ran the whole time. We never stopped. None of us fell out. We all kind of kept pushing each other, and we came in first by like 7 or 8 minutes. So after I finished that, I was like, wow, like I can do this. I was not mentally tough enough on the first ones to do what my body could actually do. So that was a turning point in me for like, okay, like I need to step it up and be a little more mentally tough. And so we got to sleep in during amphib phase, which is awesome because those, especially during night fins, you might not get in until 2 in the morning, and you still have to be up at 6 for everything else. So you got decent sleep. So the last phase, amphib, was when the Zodiacs. And so you're doing surf breaking, which you go out to the ocean and you paddle out through the surf, and you have to get over the break zone where the waves are crashing. So your boats are getting flipped over by the waves, and then you're going back was the worst, because then the waves catch you and they flip you over front ways, and then you get buried into the dirt. So that's surf passages were those called. Okay.
So Zodiacs, those are small inflatable rowboats, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're not light. They weigh about 400 pounds, 500 pounds. Yeah. So we'd have to, most of the time we were carrying them on our shoulders. You have to run with the boats, and eventually we did get the motors put on them. So we'd learn how to do water nav by going to different waypoints using GPS, and learning how to operate the boats with the motors. And then we had a motor appreciation day, which after we had the motors for a while, they took them off and we had to use paddles, and so we had to do a race out in the middle of Coronado Bay. And once we get out into the middle, at one point our boat wasn't doing well, so our instructor, the TAC instructor who was with us, they took our paddles away, so we had to paddle with our hands, and we still had to keep up with our balance. We were paddling with our hands instead of the actual paddles, but we got out to the middle of the bay, and we had to do breaches, which basically you tip the boat over and you have to figure out how to get it turned out right side out. So we're just kind of swimming out in the middle of the bay, and one of the instructors was like, all right, everybody get a ground sample. A ground sample is when you're out in the water, you have to go down, swim down to the very bottom and grab whatever dirt it is, bring it up so you can see what it is. Because when you do a hydro survey, you have to document all, okay, if is it gravel, is it sand, is it mud? So if you're getting ready to prep for a landing force, they know what kind of conditions are in. And we're like, this has got to be 100 feet deep. There's no way we're going to get to the bottom of this. So everybody we just went underwater and you swam a little ways and everybody come back like, no, we can't get anything. And we had one guy, his name is McDougall, he's a real good friend of mine now. Called him a Blue Falcon, is a buddy effer, somebody who kind of screws everybody else. He was a Blue Falcon that day. He came up with a handful of dirt in the middle of Coronado Bay, and we're just all like, are you serious? And even the instructors were like, how did you do that? And it happened to be, it was low tide, and it was only about 20 feet deep. So of course, he's like, well, everybody else, go down and get one. So then we all had to go down, swim down to the very bottom, which really wasn't that far, but nobody really tried because we figured, we're in the middle of a bay, there's no way. So he came up with a handful of dirt. We're just like, are you serious? Like, man. He's like, it wasn't that hard. Thanks, Doug. Good job.
All right. So how long? I mean, from the time when you first report for boot camp back in September, Wolf? I mean, now when you complete this recon training, now when is it?
We graduated, I believe it was May. So it had been September of '05, now it's May of 2006.
Okay. And having gotten through all of that, are there other particular things that you want to mention about that experience, or have you hit the main points?
No, I think that's
Okay.
the basic Reconnaissance Course it was tough, but it was not nearly as intense as the RTPs. So, and most people graduated that. I think the dropout rate eventually was probably about 20-30%. The original attrition is about 50%. Whoever first tries, about 50%. So, but by the time you get to BRC, most of those guys have already dropped out.
Right.
So, I think we graduated with like 40-some kids.
Okay.
And then we got assigned to our individual units.
All right. So what did you get assigned to?
I got assigned to First Reconnaissance Battalion in Camp Pendleton. Some guys got sent to 3rd, which is over in Okinawa. Some got to 2nd, who were on the East Coast.
Okay. Are these the reconnaissance battalions that are kind of part of 1st Marine Division as
Yes.
opposed to 3rd Marine Division? 1st
Yes.
Marine is Camp Pendleton. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then once you get there, what kind of duty do you have, or what are you doing? So
you're the little man on the totem pole, so you think life is going to be great. I'm a Recon Marine. I can wear my black on black now, so Marine Corps colors for PT gear, 99% of the Marine Corps has to wear green on green. So you wear the olive drab tops with the green shorts. Recon Marines, we wear these black shirts and then black shorts. So black on black was a huge thing to be able to earn that, to wear that. So we figured, well, now that we can wear our black and black, everything is going to be cool. We get to the battalion, and then we realize, okay, we know nothing, we're still weak, and we're the low mans on the totem pole. So life is still extremely hard from there on, because then you get assigned to your team. Your team we operate pretty much in 5-man teams. You have a team leader, assistant team leader, a radio operator, a point man, and a slack man, which is a lot different than a normal squad in the infantry. They usually do 13 or 14-man teams.
Right.
So we operate in a much smaller, cohesive unit where everybody is functional. They can pretty much carry out any task. So that was an eye-opener too. That was, the team leaders, they put you through the ringer. They put you through tough pool workouts, and because every morning is PT from 7 a.m. to 9. So the team leaders and assistant team leaders would put you through the ringer, getting you trained up and ready to go to actually be a functional, instead of just a boot who's just out of BRC, to actually be a functional member of a team.
Okay. Okay. How long did you wind up spending at Camp Pendleton then once you joined that unit?
I spent the rest of my time here, outside of being deployed. So the
Yeah,
whole.
well, I mean, how long was it between when you arrive and when you get your first deployment?
We were there let's see, we got there in May. I think we started, a workup is when you start the training cycle for a deployment. So we had about 2 months before our workup actually started.
Okay. So during that 2 months when you're first there, do they give you extra duties, or do they just treat you like an inferior?
Yeah, there's not really any extra duties other than the teams are forming, so you're trying to figure out whose team you're going to be in, who's going to be your team leader. You're figuring out the pecking order, and well, you know you're at bottom, but you try to figure out who everybody else is. You learn who to stay away from because they're crazy and they'll thrash you. So there really wasn't a whole lot going those first 2 months. It was a lot of people were gone at training. So during these phases, because they just got back from a deployment not that long ago. So this is where people go to sniper school or dive school or jump school. So this is more of the schools phase.
Yeah. Do you get to go off the base and do other stuff now?
Yeah. So during training, you have libo on weekends, and that's pretty much it. During this, I mean, you're in the fleet now. You have, I mean, you have to be there when you're during working hours, but once it's done, I mean, you can go see a movie, go to the grocery store. I mean, you can do whatever you want. A lot of guys went surfing and stuff, so you're kind of on your own. So you did have some free time. So that first couple months there really wasn't much going on, and then we started our actual workup. I actually got pretty lucky. I got to do some decent training before our first deployment, which a lot of guys didn't. I was an RTO, radio transmission operator, so I did advanced training on the radios. I also I was one of the few guys to go through a breacher's course, which is where they teach you how to do demolitions, to do breaches into buildings and stuff. So I was a breacher for our team, so I knew how to make explosive with C4 and data sheet and blasting caps and det cord and that. So when we were doing raids, I was the front man. I would put the charges on the door and would blow the door before we go in. So that was kind of cool to be able to do that portion. I've actually got a pretty cool picture in that file. We're sitting next to we're blowing a cinder block wall, and it's about a 30-foot flame coming off of the wall, and it's right next to us. Where we're standing right next to it. It's kind of neat. So that was one of the cool training things. The other one I got to do was SERE, which is the survival training school that the Navy does. And most recon Marines get to go through that. I was one of the first ones, which was kind of cool. So it's SERE. It's survive, evade, resist, and escape. And that's pretty much a 2-week course where they teach you do a few days in the classroom, where they teach you basically how the course is going to go, and then you get dropped off into, I don't even know where the training is. I don't think they ever really tell you. But the kind of scenario is you're a Marine who just pretty much your plane just went down in enemy territory, and now you're behind enemy lines, and you've got to figure out what to do. So the first portion is survive. So they teach you survival skills. So water procurement, food procurement, how to navigate with the stars or with the compass, or how to use anything like that. And basically there's no food. They don't give you any food. So you're in the field for about 10 days. You don't have food. You're not really sleeping much because you're moving a lot. You're trying to, because the second part is evade. So after the survival portion, they actually have,
All right.
There we go. So after the survival portion, you have evasion. And that is, they have OPFOR out there with AKs with blanks in them, and they're trying to track you. So they teach you counter tracking measures and how to avoid being detected when you're moving through different territory. So that lasts probably 4 or 5 days where you're trying to evade the OPFOR and not get captured. Now, eventually, at the very end, they have to capture you. That's part of the second phase is the resist and escape. So they put you in a prison camp. You basically get captured by your captors, and they do a lot. I don't know what exactly I can say about it because some of it is classified.
Sorry.
But I mean, they beat you, they interrogate you. You sleep in about a 2-foot by 3-foot little cement dog house for multiple nights in a row. They play babies crying, music extremely loud. They lock you in little boxes and spray you with fire hoses. And again, this is in the middle of winter, and they're spraying you with fire hoses and do whatever they can to break you down and get information out of you. And part of it is they train you how to give up information in strategic ways, so that it's you make it tough for them, but you still have to survive. So they teach that, and then you're supposed to learn how to escape, but it's kind of structured how you can escape, so you can't really just run off because they know they can't really shoot you. So there's certain things. I never actually got the chance to escape because you have to. There's certain protocols you have to follow. I never got to escape, but that was pretty cool training to do all of that. And then from there, I think that was the last pre-deployment training I did before we actually got into the workup where we do like Mojave Viper, which is the desert training out in 29 Palms out in the desert, which it's ironic how it works both times. So the first time we went, it was winter in the desert, so we did winter training, but our deployment was in the summer. And then the second time I went, it was in the summer, and then our deployment was in the winter. So you never really got to train for quite the climate, but the environment was pretty close.
So there was an extended gap between the workup and when you actually went over?
Yeah, well, the workup takes 6 months to do because there's different phases of your workup.
So by the time you're done, you're pretty much in the same season, right? I mean, you start, if it takes you that.
Yeah, but Mojave Viper was, I'm trying to remember. We did it it was in the winter. Mm-hmm. Which was, some interesting stories about that too. Basically, it's it's where your first introduction of like urban warfare, and they have a mountain town, which is like a fake town where you go through and you do sim rounds and you shoot aggressors and stuff. But we're trained observers, so a big portion of what we do is we do long-range patrols into hide sites and we observe towns. So our one mission, it was a 3 or 4 day mission, and we were supposed to we hiked out. And we did a 6 or 7 kilometer pack with full packs, 100 pounds, because I had all the radios, because I was the radio operator. And your pack is so full, you don't have room for things like sleeping bags or blankets. So we got up there, and we're up on top of this little rocky mountain overlooking the whole town where the fake Iraqis are. And it gets down to like in the 20s at night. It snowed a couple of times when we were up there. And we had one sleeping bag between 6 of us. And me and the other radio operator, we had one poncho liner, which is kind of like a really thin silk sheet for us to keep warm. And they're long enough where you have a choice of either keeping your head warm or your feet warm. It's not long enough to do both. Both of us chose to keep our heads warm and keep our bodies warm. And we ended up both getting frostbite in both of our feet because we were there 4 days in exposure without that. So when we were walking back, we were both like, I can't feel my feet. Can you feel your feet? No, I can't feel my feet either. Oh, well, hopefully they're all right when we got back to it. And they told us that we had a mild case of frostbite, and I didn't get feeling back in my feet for almost, because that was at the very end. I was actually at home already on leave when the feeling started coming back in my feet. And if you ever had frostbite before, what happens is when you regain, when they thaw and the nerves start firing again, it's extremely painful because the nerves are just firing like crazy because they've been inactive for so long. So I remember it was like 4 or 5 days straight. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd put my feet down, and it'd feel like you're just stepping on a bed of needles. It was just pain shooting through my feet from the nerve. And that was at least a couple weeks before that kind of went back to normal. So that was pretty brutal for training.
Okay. So you prepare to go overseas, and then you get to go home before you actually leave?
Yes,
Okay.
a pre-deployment leave. So I think I got 2 weeks. Went home just before. They give you a little break to go relax and pretty much say goodbye to your family and all that kind of stuff. And a little morbid, but I mean, it is what you got to do.
Right. Okay. Now, where do they send you, and how do they get you there?
One other training thing that we did that was pretty unique. Being recon, we got to do. They did water inserts via helicopter. So you'd take a helicopter out into the ocean or the bay, and they drop us off a couple kilometers off, and we'd jump off the helicopter in the water, then we'd have to swim back in with our pack. So that was one neat other training thing that we got to do. Mm-hmm. But one of our final, so during your workup, we do a patrol phase, which is where you do all this. You have green side and black side. Green side is and you're patrolling. The whole point is to not be discovered. You're clandestine. Black side is your actual engaging. That's like more of your urban warfare. So this is all green side patrolling. And the mission was, it was an amphibious insert followed by like a 7 to 10 click movement to our objective, and then it was a 5-day observation of the objective. Then we moved out, had helicopter extract. Well, we were getting ready to go, and the amphi insert was, we were in Zodiacs, and they would take us out, and our objective was we were supposed to be dropped off 2 kilometers off ashore, and we had to swim in with full packs, sniper rifles, everything we were going to do for the next 5 days. It was Type 2 sea conditions, which was a small craft advisory, so small boats weren't allowed to go out. Well, we went out. They dropped us off just outside the break. They moved us a little closer than we were supposed to. They moved us just outside the break zone, and we jumped. It was in the middle of the night, so we everything we do it. Anytime we move is at night. So we're in the ocean. We got our packs. The pack weighs 80, 90 pounds. You're swimming with it. You got your fins, and we were wearing wetsuits because it was cold. And then we swim in, and I just remember seeing when we got to the break zone. I mean, there were 8 to 10 foot waves, and we're carrying these 10-foot packs, and you're just waiting for your turn for the wave to take you, and it's just gonna tumble you and hopefully get you as close as possible to shore. You can get up and walk and run before the next wave hits you. And I just remember there's guys everywhere, their feet and fins, and it was a disaster. And once we finally got to shore, we ditched our wetsuits, put on our camis, got the boots on, then we started it was about a 7-hour movement up through the mountains into the brush to observe the objective for 5 days, which we're doing reports, and I became very good at nighttime photography. I kind of set the battalion SOP on how to do it, so I could take a picture of an objective in the middle of the night in complete darkness, and it looked like it was complete daylight without using flashes, just the right aperture and time delay settings on the shutter, and then labeling them with all the different points. So if they're looking at the picture, they know exactly where this is. There's a coordinate, there's directions, there's things are labeled on there. So we're doing nighttime photography and reporting on what if we saw enemy movement or anything like that. So that goes on for 5 days. You're just pretty much up and taking turns sleeping here and there for 5 days in a sniper hide. And then moved out, got a helicopter extract, and that was the kind of the grand finale of that phase.
All right. Okay. So then, all right. So you finished the leave home. Now what happens to you?
Now I think we only had about a week from when we got back to. We were doing the final pack out, so you're getting your list ready. You have a packing list of everything you have to bring overseas. You get all that put together, and then you have to pack all your company gear, the rifles and the machine guns and all that stuff, and you're really just preparing and getting everything set up and ready to go. Finally, when the day gets there, which is kind of a mix of nervousness and excitement, like you're really excited to go, but you're not really sure what's going to happen. So it was kind of a big to-do. There was all kinds of people out on the parade deck when we were getting ready to leave. They had big charter buses there. There's people there with little flags waving, and said goodbye to the families. And I told my family not to, come when I get home. It's going to be, don't come when we leave. It's just, it's a long, because they live in Michigan. So we got on the buses and headed to March Air Force Base. Air Force Base, we took a commercial plane from there to, I think we stopped in Maine. And so we got M4s, and we're walking around with guns and in a regular airport in a terminal. And then we flew out from Maine to, I think we stopped in Germany for a couple hours. Then from Germany went to Kuwait. And then from Kuwait, we were there for a few days as they onboard you, get all your stuff situated for your unit. So you're sleeping in a tent for a few days. Then we took a C-130 from Kuwait into Iraq to TQ, is the big air base there. And then you're in Iraq, and it was just getting to be summer, so it wasn't ungodly hot yet, but it was still pretty hot. It was probably 95, 100 degrees. So we get there, we're there for a few days until the advance party was actually already at Camp Fallujah from our battalion. So they actually came to pick us up in 7 tons. And so our first experience was they come in the middle of the night, and we're loading onto the fully armored 7-ton. And they're talking about, yeah, they had 2 IEDs that they hit on the way there, and they're taking small arms fire. And I'm just like, great, I'm not even going to be here a day, and I'm going to get shot.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Now, what did you know much about the situation in Iraq as you were about to go there? Did they brief you at all, or tell you what was going on?
yeah, you knew, because where we were at Camp Fallujah, there was always a recon unit there. So we replaced Third Recon, and then Second Recon replaces us. So it's just a big cycle. So we had gotten some intel from them about what was going on, and we knew what the situation was. We kind of knew what our mission was. So you know a little bit, but they keep a lot from you too. So we kind of knew, but then again, it kind of didn't. So.
All right. Do you have any incidents on the drive to Fallujah, or was that quiet?
It was pretty quiet. The truck hit an ID on the way out to get us, but they had since then been fixed and we were ready to go. But so I had to sit. I got the lucky seat. I was sitting. So the way the 7-ton sit, you have giant armor sides, and then the back has an open door area where the ladder goes, so you can get into it. I was sitting right in front of the ladder with like nothing from me. Like, sweet. I'm gonna get shot on the way into the thing. But no, it was quiet. It was kind of eerie driving through Fallujah in the middle of the night, because it's a fairly big city. It's bigger than Grand Rapids, so there's pretty good sized buildings, but everything's bombed out and it's dark. There's no power. So you're driving through the city and onto Camp Fallujah, which is a pretty secure FOB, forward operating base. You can walk around without your headgear, flak jacket on. You just have to carry your gun with you wherever you go. So we got Camp Fallujah is where our base of operations were, where the battalion stayed, and where we had you stayed in cans. They're little construction trailers with luckily air conditioners in them that you sleep in while you're not doing operations.
Okay. Now, was this kind of outside of the town proper, or on the outside?
Yeah, it was just outside. So basically, it was MSR, main service route. It was basically like a 6-lane expressway. Just outside of the actual city itself was Camp Fallujah. It was actually formerly one of Saddam's military bases that we had taken over.
All right. So what's your kind of first impression of Iraq when you got there?
It smelled bad. Everything smelled bad. Everything was brown. There's no colors. And it was hot. Even at night, it was 80, 90 degrees.
Okay. Now, once you're there, what is your unit doing?
So we did a turnover, they called it a RIP, with Third Recon. They told us kind of where we were going to be operating, what was going on in the area, and kind of the environment. And our initial objective was it was called Karma. That was the name of the city. It was just outside of Fallujah, a little village. And our goal there was to make sure there were still enemy insurgents in the area, so we were supposed to drive them out, create relations with the locals, and try and build a little bit of goodwill, and just try and get them to give us information, and then kind of do some census reporting of how many villagers and what kind of was making up the village. So that was our first operation outside of base. And it probably took 2 weeks before we actually got our first mission to go out there, and it's called a left seat ride. So part of Third Recon went with us to show us kind of where we were going. So we stayed in this little OP observation point that was out in the middle of this big field, and they showed us where there was a hole in the wall that went through, and they said like 3 weeks ago a rocket came through and exploded on the wall and injured one of the guys sleeping in the bunks. Like, sweet, like that's where we're staying. So it's probably 1 or 2 in the morning. And so we head out in our patrol. We're going through this big field, and you can see the village kind of the side. And it was a very weird feeling. It was because it was very quiet, very calm, and almost kind of peaceful like. But you're like kind of walking into a war zone. But it was a unique experience, just knowing that something really bad could be right in front of you, and it's walking through a very peaceful field.
Now, was this just your recon team, or were you with other teams?
No, just our team. So, we went out at this time as a platoon. So we were in Charlie Company. That was our platoon, or our company, and then we were in second platoon. So second platoon, we were always together for the most part. So we went together, and there's 4 teams. So we patrolled into the city, and we started doing knock and talks, which basically just knock on the door, and if they don't answer, you kick it in, and you go talk to the people and see what's going on in the house, and take note of who lives there and what they have, and search the house a little bit to make sure there's nothing illegal in there, and See if you can, and we always do it at night so that they don't know when you're coming, they don't see you, and nobody else can see what's going on.
So what kind of responses do you get when knock on somebody's door at night?
A lot of confusion, but at this point, the war's been going on for 4 years now, so it's not that. I mean, they know the routine.
Okay. So did they usually open the door for you?
If they were awake, well, the problem is in the summertime, most of them sleep on the roof because it's cooler than inside their mud houses. So if they didn't do it quick enough, then we help ourselves in. But that was a little different because we just went in and we eventually got daylight and we still kept doing knock and talks throughout the town. Nothing really happened that first day, and then we kind of got a feel of the layout of the town. Then we went back. Actually, there was one house there's some really nice houses out there, and I remember because there was a chicken that was just walking around the house and it was just sitting on one of the couches just staring at us as we were talking to people. And when we went back to that same house, like 3 weeks later, the house was destroyed. Like they knew that we were in there talking, and the bad guys came in, and what happened to the family, not sure, but everything was turned upside down, and there was nothing left in the house. But our normal operations were, we'd leave as a platoon in the middle of the night, and we'd go to our area, whether it be Karma or Sitcher or Lahib or whatever city we were in, and we would take a firm base. So basically, we would pick the nicest, biggest house in the area that had a generator that we knew had air conditioning, and we'd knock on the door, and sometimes they answer, sometimes not, and say, "Hi, we're the Marines. We're taking your house for a week or so," and we'd kick them out of their house for a week, and we'd take over, and we'd firm it up. So we'd put sandbags on the roof with bulletproof glass, and we'd have observation points. So you always had a team on the top of the roof looking in every direction. And it wasn't so bad. We paid them cash for them to leave, so it's not like they were hurting for it. I mean, they got money for it. But so we set up a base of operations in whatever city we're in, and then from there we would do patrols out, sometimes during the day, usually at night. And then if we had raids or if we got intel that stuff was going on, we'd go from those. And that's most of the time we had contact. It was in those firm bases because very rarely would they attack you when you were in your patrol. Because they knew who we were. They knew we weren't regular Marines. They knew we weren't regular like Army things. We had the short guns. We had the M4s, and we kind of had cool gear. So they knew that they didn't really mess us with. We were on the move, so they would try and attack us when we were in the firm base. That was their only chance to really do that.
Okay. Now, is this basically what you did for your entire time in that area, or did they change your jobs over time?
That was pretty much for that first deployment. That's pretty much what it was. We go out for a week or two at a time, run patrols out, search for weapons caches. We found some cool stuff. There was this one. It was actually kind of a scary incident. There was a known weapons cache in this school, so we got into the school. It had a big fence around us. We got into the schoolyard and we're searching it. And it was me and one of my teammates, and then our platoon commander was with us. And we're searching this classroom. It looked like an American classroom. There's chairs with the little tabletops on it. We're walking through, and I hear our lieutenant yell out, "Stop, nobody move." And we all kind of freeze, and we look around, and he's like, "Everybody back out of the room very slowly." So we back out. And we shine the flashlight, and you could see copper wires running through the chairs. And we found out they weren't trip wires, which we thought they originally were. They were, they were wired to. There was IEDs in there, but they were pre-wired and they were ready to go somewhere else. So we found a suicide vest. There were mortar tubes that were wired to blow up, and we ended up finding in that whole school a ton of illegal AKs, Kalashnikovs. Older machine guns, some mortar tubes, some rockets, a bunch of bad stuff. And we actually went around and we caught a couple of the guys that were, we rounded up all the local guys that were close, and we did testing on them to see if they had gunpowder, and a lot of them had gunpowder on their hands, so we detained them. But that was kind of scary, walking through the classroom and knowing that there's a live S-Fest that's sitting in front of you.
Okay. Now, what's the specific time frame for when you're in Iraq on that first tour?
This was 2007. We got there. We got home in October, so I think we must have left in like May.
Okay.
May, June, July, September.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, over the course of that time, did you notice any change in the overall situation? Did things get quieter or worse? Or
At that point, it was pretty steady. There was still a lot of action and a lot of activity going on pretty much throughout the country. It really wasn't slowing down much at that point. I say it was you get the reports of casualties and stuff, and they were pretty consistent throughout the whole time, and the contact reports and stuff.
Okay.
So.
And did your company take any casualties while it was there?
Yeah, we had some. Luckily, my platoon, we had some injuries, but no casualties, thankfully. Had some close calls. We had Butler. We were in it's actually a pretty funny story, as far as funny goes for being in a combat situation. We were in this house. I can't remember which city we were in, Lahib or Sitcher, and we're sitting up there. And I was actually on watch, watching, say, the south side, and there's a reed line on the north side so their reeds are like 10, 12 foot high, and it's kind of a ditch. And we get contact from the reed line, so it just opens up with all kinds of machine gun fire, so I hear the snaps of the bullets going over your head. And I'm watching the other side, and so usually there's always 4 guys on watch, one watching each direction with overlapping fields of fire. So once the fire starts, then everybody who's down below doing whatever else that they're doing, they get kitted up and they come out to the top and they start engaging. And then one of my teammates, his name is Gross, he called me his big brother because I always kind of looked out for him. He comes running he sees me, he comes running to my side, he yells, "America," throws his M4 over the edge of the building, and is looking for somebody to engage in. And I'm sitting there, it's in the middle of a firefight, and I just calmly look at him and I say, "Hey, Gross." "Yeah." He's like, "The war's over there." He's like, "Oh, roger that." He picks up his gun, runs over to the other side of the building, puts it over, and I see him start shooting on the other side. And it was funny how calm I was. It was relative of, and I heard someone say, safety is a relative word in a war zone. I felt completely safe on the other side of the building, knowing that everybody else was over there. And I was actually watching chickens run around the yard on the other side. I was thinking about shooting a chicken just because I wasn't having anything else to shoot at. But it was kind of a weird sense of, I felt completely safe right there, even though 30 feet away we were actively getting shot at, and there was mortars coming in. There was mortars coming in our area. But one of the guys, Butler, he had the closest call on that. It was probably an hour later. We were looking, going through all the gear, and somebody's like, "Hey, you have a hole in your butt pouch." The butt pouch it's a drop pouch you wear on your back, so when you're shooting, you drop your mags into it so you can retain them, so later you can refill them again. He had a hole going through his butt pouch, and he started pulling the stuff, and he had a pop-up flare, which is a silver tube about this big around, and it's a flare, and you hit him like this, and the flare goes out so you can warn people that you're there. A bullet went through his butt pouch, hit his pop-up flare, went down his pop-up flare and out the other side of his butt pouch, and he never even knew that it was that close to shooting his butt off. Actually, we did have one guy get injured in that. He was shooting his the 240, which is one of our machine guns, and he was going to take it off the roof to move it to a bit different position, and he grabbed the barrel and got a second-degree burn in his hand, and it swelled up, so he actually had to get air flighted out. But that was I think that was oh no, we had the dog handler. We had a dog handler with us. It was a bomb-sniffing dog. They were downstairs in one of the rooms, and what they say is if you ever get contact, you never stand up in front of a window, because that's where they're going to be shooting through. Well, he stood up in front of a window and got hit in the arm, got shot in the arm, so he ended up getting flighted out. And another guy who was down in the main area too, he didn't even know he got hit. He got hit in the arm. It went through his tattoo. It just kind of grazed it. So he was bleeding a little bit. He never even told anybody about it because he didn't. So yeah.
When you got into a firefight, how long would it normally last?
They were very quick, 3 to 5 minutes, because they know if they last any longer than this, we have air support coming if we can't see them. So they usually, they spray and pray, they shoot at you, and then they run off. That's pretty much how they operated. They weren't real organized. They weren't that aggressive. It was usually quick, 3 to 5 minutes, and then they were gone.
How do you think the Iraqi locals, the civilian population, how do you think they viewed you, or how do they treat you?
For the most part, to our faces, they liked us, they welcomed us. The kids loved us because we gave them candy and pop and money sometimes, and they were always very friendly to your face. But you knew for the most part that they probably weren't telling you the truth, like, oh no, there's no bad guys in this area. But you knew it was bad when, if you're up at your watch and you're in the OP and all of a sudden you see a family with all their stuff and they leave the house, like you know something bad's about to happen because they know something is going on. So that's kind of what we look out for, is them behaving erratically. You didn't really believe what they said.
And how much pressure were they under from the Al-Qaeda people, or?
I wasn't Al-Qaeda at this point, but it was, they were in a tough position because and there's some places we know where we talked to people where they came in afterwards and the family was just gone. We're not sure what happened to them.
Yeah.
So they were under a lot of pressure to really not say too much. So it was, and it's tough for them because if we're there, we're trying to help them and trying to get rid of the bad guys, which they don't want them there either. They're very, because like a lot of the Iraqis smoke and they like to drink, but the members of these factions, they don't allow any of that. So they shut down the cigarettes and the alcohol. So they don't want them around there either. And they're doing a lot of bad things to them and stealing their stuff. But as soon as we leave, they've got no protection. So they're put in a tough place of if they're going to tell us something, they got to make sure that they're going to be okay after we leave.
Now, did you have any Iraqi military or police with you at all?
Not with us. We helped the IPs a couple of times with some of their things, but like if they were building up checkpoints and stuff, we helped them a few times, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time with them.
IPs being Iraqi
Iraqi
persons?
police, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So there's not at this stage sort of an active collaboration between the local leadership and your officers? I mean, do they work together?
We tried a little bit, but that was a lot higher than what our level was.
Right.
We did some meetings with some local, I don't even know who they were, but they were pretty happy because they had security guards and guys with machine guns outside of their gate, and our officers sat and talked with them. That's more on their level. But they did some collaboration. Our job was mostly with the locals and the natives, that part.
All right. Other particular things that happen on that tour that kind of stand out in your memory?
We had a lot of close calls that we were just lucky. We had, you get a lot of stupid stuff that you get told you're supposed to do, and you wonder whose great idea was that. One, we were supposed to go check out this bridge, or it was a crossing, that had known that there were some IEDs there, and they wanted us to go check it out, which in my mind, okay, why am I going to go look for an IED? Why don't we just send somebody else there to go blow it up? But they wanted us to go look. So we were getting all ready to go check out this crossing, and at the last minute they scratched our mission, and we didn't go, and we found out the next day there was an actual live pressure plate where we were going to go, and a high likelihood that one of us would have stepped on it when we got there. So we, like, by the skin of our teeth, we got really lucky on that one. Another incident that we were very lucky on, this was one of those missions that, I don't know who thought of this up, but I got some pictures of it, but we were doing a raid, and then we had to secure a bridge crossing, and we were coming from this side. It was a couple teams of us. We were coming from this side, and then the rest of the company was coming from this way. So we were supposed to come from the back side, and to get there, we had to cross this huge canal, and we weren't sure if it was full of water. It was about a 15-foot canal, and they're usually pretty deep. If you can't really just walk through them. So we built a bridge, and our bridge was a bunch of 2x4s that we nailed together about this wide, 15 feet long, that we carried about 4 kilometers through the desert on our shoulders. Yeah, didn't make any sense to me. But so we got there, and of course it was dry. We could have just walked down through, but we already had a bridge, so we threw it across. We got across the bridge, and then we're going through these, I don't know if they were culverts or what, but they were cement. I think it was a water treatment plant, but there was cement barriers about this wide, and then there was a drop down about 4 feet down, and it was about that wide. So there was like 5 or 6 of them we had to go across, and we were crossing them, and my lieutenant captain at the time, Captain Broughton, he misstepped and he went down in one of them, and he landed like this and blew out his shoulder, catching himself on it. So he had a bum wing the rest of that trip. So we had to help him out of there. We got to the house that we were supposed to secure. We did the raid on the house. There were a couple guys inside. We got them detained. And the next phase was supposed to be, this path that we were supposed to clear was known to have IEDs on it. And we had a bomb sniffing dog with us, we had metal detectors, and we had a whole team that was supposed to thoroughly sweep this whole area to make sure it was clear for the rest of the forces to come across. Well, we were running hours behind because everything was just taking a long time. So somebody made a decision, you know what, we're just going to quick do this. So the captain grabbed the dog, one guy with the metal detector, and they did a quick walk up over the bridge, swept it, came back, and they're like, okay, it's clear, send the guys over. The team coming over, it was actually from I think a 3rd or 4th platoon. They're coming over and they're walking, and all of a sudden they hear a pop. Everybody stops moving, and we heard it from where we were because we were watching the bridge crossing, and we didn't know what it was. Everybody just kind of stopped, and then a few minutes, and then they kind of cleared over, and eventually we found out that there was 2 155 shells, the big mortar tubes, wired to blow with a pressure plate. It was basically they take a reed and they hollow it out and they put copper wire through it. When you step on the reed, it makes contact and it blows it. But the blasting cap was bad, or it wasn't attached, so all you heard was the blasting cap that went off. It didn't actually detonate. So if it would have detonated, we would have lost probably 15 guys because they were all coming across at the same time. But luckily, it was either the powder was bad or something. But so we definitely somebody was looking out for us on that one because that was a really close call. And some people got in big trouble over that one because it was not done correctly. But even we found out later from the actual the bomb guys that it was almost impossible to detect. Even a metal detector wouldn't have picked up that thin line going through that reed. It said it was very, very tough, even if you were doing a very slow, thorough search, because it was in the middle of the night too. So.
Well, is there not a way to detect the shells themselves?
Well, because the shells were off the path, pointed in the direction, so you would have had to. I mean, there really would have been no way to detect it because they were 10 feet off of the path
so
they were going.
Too far away for being in the lane that you're sweeping.
So, but they were pointed in the direction, so once they hit, it would have covered the about a 30-foot area with shrapnel and explosives. So.
All right. Now, you'd mentioned that in your training, one of the things that you got to do was to kind of blow holes in walls.
Yeah.
Did you actually do that in Iraq?
Yep. So a couple of the raids that we did got information they're suspected either IED builders or factions held up. So I think I got to do it 2 or 3 times, and that's kind of a funny story too. So there's different types of charges you make for different types of doors. So if it's a thin wood door, it's a pretty small, thin charge to blow the door. If it's a heavy metal or cement door, it's a pretty heavy duty charge to blow that. Well, the raid wasn't. We were supposed to do 5 houses that night. So I had 2 or 3 charges I had created that earlier that day for it, and for each for a specific cause. So the first couple houses we got denied. We were okay. Well, we're here. Can we use the charge? No, don't use the charge. Just do a normal breach. So we breached the door. So we got to one house, and they finally said, okay, you can use the charge. And we figured, okay, this is gonna be the only time we can use the charge. So I said, I've got these 3 charges. Which one do you want to use? He's like, use the big one. So I pick out the big one, and this is meant for like a steel reinforced door. And it was like a thin 2-ply, like Home Depot door that was on the outside of this house. So I put it, and the makeup of the house was, it was the entry door, and it had it was attached to the kitchen, which had glass windows, and then it went to the main area. Most Iraqi houses have called a great room. It's one big open room, and then there's no hallways. There's just doors off of the great room. So there was the kitchen door. It went through the hall, through the kitchen, and then the great room. And then there's a bedroom on the other side. So I put this fairly large charge on this little door, and it was a time charge. So you pull the cap, and then you have to count it. It burns so fast, so you count it out. So I pull it. I get in the stack, and I'm so excited I forget to count. I'm like, shoot. So I have the radio. They're all waiting for me to call it out. So I just pick a number like 5, 4, 3, 2, and I was within a half a second, right, just by blind luck, of the charge going off. So it blows, and it blew every window in that kitchen out, and we were standing next to the window, so it blew all the windows out of the kitchen. And we get in, and luckily everybody was on the roof at the time, because we got in, and we searched the house, everything was clear, we got it out. It ended up not being, the people who were supposed to be there weren't there. But the charge was so big, it not only it blew the door off that it was that we put the charge on, it blew open the door across. There was a bedroom all the way across the great room on their side. It blew that door off the hinges, and the handle for the door that I blew was sticking in the wall on the other side of the bedroom. So, a little too big. And of course, we had 2 more houses to go, and then there was another house we got to that had a steel reinforced door, and they said blow that one. Well, I didn't have the charge for it. I had this little dinky charge, and it basically was like lighting a firecracker off on a 2x4. So that was actually kind of an embarrassing raid because it was a steel reinforced door, and they had rebar going into the cement wall as like a deadbolt. So I blew it. We had a key to the city, which is a big, round, heavy, like a battering ram. So we're down there. There's supposed to be bad guys in there. So I hit the charge. The door doesn't open. So our point man's up there with the battering ram trying to knock down the door for like 5 minutes. And they're just like, if there's bad guys in there, they're just going to kill us. I mean, this is just stupid. And the guys were all sleeping on the roof. The guy finally yelled from the top. He came down and he unlocked the door for us and let us in. I was like, real good job, guys. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of definitely a failed raid.
All right, and not a great way to win friends and influence people, probably.
No.
Now, while you're there, I mean, how much time would you spend on base as opposed to out on patrol?
Usually we do a week on, week off. It's
okay.
Pretty much the rotation. So we go out for a week, do our operations, come back, have usually restock, refuel, replenish, clean your weapons for a day or two. Then you usually have 2 or 3 days where it's just kind of you have free time to go to the internet cafe, go to the gym.
Yeah, what kind of living facilities or conditions did you have there?
So when we were on Camp Fallujah, or the MEC, sometimes it's called, it was kind of like a little city. There was 2 chow halls that were open pretty much 24 hours a day that you could get pretty decent food. There was 3 or 4 gyms that had decent equipment in there. There wasn't a pool, but there was like a little internet cafe where you could go get on the internet and check. It was MySpace back then, or Facebook. And there was a rec area where they had pool tables and ping pong tables and stuff like that. So it was, there's quite a few amenities when you're actually on the firm base. But
and then would you communicate with people at home that way using the internet?
Sometimes internet. We had our platoon had a satellite phone, so we all took turns calling home on the satellite phone. So it was hard because it's like a 15-hour difference. So it would be like 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd be calling in the evening back home, and I'd call, and every chance I could, I'd call home and talk to mom and dad or my sisters or all that.
All right. At this point, we're kind of, I guess, what I'd like to do here is kind of close out this first tour, and because I have to get someplace else. So they bring you back in for a second session, cover the second tour, and then stuff after that.
Okay.
So tour comes to an end kind of late in the year. It was October that you...
Yes, we got back just before Halloween.
Okay. And so how do the last weeks kind of play out? What do you do things differently or orient the next guys?
Very long and boring. So we finish up our last missions, and then our replacements come in. So part of what it is, you have the changeover. So the officers are talking to the officers, and we're talking to the teams about what's going on. So there's probably 2 weeks where we really just do nothing. So we're losing our minds. There's nothing to do. And then we get kicked out of our living quarters because the new guys coming in need to stay in where we're living. So we get kicked out to the tents. So we're staying in these big GP tents where all like 60 of us are sitting there, and it smells bad, and it's hot, and it's very boring. There's really not much to do. You go to the gym a lot, you play cards, watch movies. I say it's still real hot. The hottest that we had recorded, we were actually out on a hide site, which is kind of we manufactured. It looked just like, you couldn't tell it wasn't dirt. We built it into the side of a dune. We were watching a highway, and it was 130 degrees. We had a kestrel, which is a tool a sniper uses. It has wind speed and barometric pressure and temperature, and it was 130 degrees, and we were in the shade. I've got pictures of we had salt. It looked like we had white paint on our knuckles and our faces because we were sweating. So it was so hot, you'd sweat and it instantly dried and just turned to salt deposits on your hands and on your face. It was hot.
Now, if you're out in the field in the patrol and it's going on for the better part of a week, do you get resupplied to get more water, or did you have to find your own? Or
no, we always that's why we go out as a platoon. So we have a 7-ton truck, we have all the Humvees, and we carried all the water and all the food for us for that whole week. So when we did stuff like that at hide site, that's usually only our 1 or 2 day. So we pack everything with us when we go, and then we go back to the firm base to resupply. So, but no, as a platoon, when we were out there for the week, no, we didn't get resupplied. We had to bring everything we had with us.
Right.
A couple of times we did have to purify water and drinking water if we ran out, but that was only once, I think.
Okay. All right. So, so how long did you spend sitting on the base waiting to leave?
I think it was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
It was a very long 2 weeks. So you're just excited to get home. You want to go see your families and get back to the States, and you're just sitting there waiting and sweating.
And do you go out the way you come in, get in a truck, go to the air base?
Yep, from the same way. So you catch a C-130 to Kuwait. From Kuwait, you get a commercial airliner, and that was actually, it was pretty fun on the way home. We stopped in Ireland, and they wouldn't let us go to the bar in the airport, but they carted in on dollies like 5 cases of Heineken, so everybody got 2 Heinekens on the plane. And then we stopped in, we finally got to the States, and where did we stop? Was it Maine again? Where it was, they let us go to the bar, and they said it was like a 2 beer maximum, which that didn't happen. I got a picture. I mean, I've got an armful of Bud Lights, and so we were drinking as much as we can, as fast as we can. And the funny part was, so they round us all up, finally get us out of the bar. I mean, that waitress probably made $5,000 in the hour that we were there with, because people were just giving a $100 tip just to get a beer, because there's so many people trying to get beer. They're trying to leave, and to take off, everybody has to be in their seat, buckled up. Everybody had to pee, so everybody's standing in a line trying to get to the bathroom, because they had to go to the bathroom, and everybody's yelling at everybody, "Oh, sit in your seats, get in your seats." So they finally got everybody sitting down, and as soon as the plane took off, you saw one person pop up and run to the front, and then it was like a flood. Like, everybody unhooked their belts, and they were running to get in line to go to the bathroom as the plane was still ascending to take off, because they all had to go. So that was kind of interesting. Then we landed, that lands at March Air Force Base, and this is where trying to get home got interesting. This is when half of California was on fire in 2007, and our Camp Pendleton was actually on fire. A couple of the guys had their cars got damaged in storage, so we were stuck there because the route we had to take to get home, they closed down the highway. So we were stuck there for probably 2 or 3 hours. Our family's all on base waiting for us. Everybody's just waiting. We're just stuck there doing nothing. Finally, we got clearance we had another route we had to take. Finally got back, and all the families are on the parade deck waving flags, and everybody's cheering as the buses come in, and we unload. And of course, nothing can be easy, so before we can just go say hi to our families, we all have to go to the armory, turn in our weapons, get everything accounted for. We have to make sure everything's there. And then finally, that took probably an hour to get everything done. Once that was done, we finally were released to go see our families, and we had a couple days where my family came in, rented one of the beach cottages right there on base that was right on the beach. So we spent a week with them. That was a really good time. Everybody was together, and then I didn't even get to go home from there. I started my training phase pretty much right there. Because it was Halloween, and I left for jump school at Fort Benning before Thanksgiving. So I was already in training pretty much 5 days after I got off the plane.
All right. Okay. Well, I think we will kind of close out this session here, and then we'll work on scheduling you to get you back in and finish it. But thank you very much for coming in today.
Okay, thank you.